6:13 right now on Duma FM, more talk, more music. Welcome back, dear listener. This morning, I had the privilege of actually talking to one overcomer of a kind. Her name is Ashley Thaba. She is an amazing lady. She has got such energy, you won't believe it. She is all, and very much so, about the welfare of families. She would like to see healthy families here in Botswana, and I believe the world over. We had a chat this morning, and this is how our conversation took off. Ashley Thaba, I believe that's the name I should be calling you by.
Sure, that's the name you can call me by.
And to the listener, one might just want to hear it from you. We usually say, give someone the platform to introduce themselves, who exactly they are and where they come from.
Lina la me ke Ashley Thaba, ke swako America, me ke nyetse mona watutumi. So I can say now I'm from Tutumi because that's where my husband is from.
Wow, quite interesting. And obviously we are born young and we grow to be the old people that we are now. But when we're pretty young, obviously we had our own dreams and the like that when I grow up, this is what I would like to be. Do you see yourself living your childhood dreams, or do you remember your childhood dreams as something that's a bit distant from the real Ashley Thaba?
When I was 12 years old, God specifically told me that you'll be a missionary in Africa. I didn't even know Botswana existed at the time, but I knew that God had said you're going to be a missionary in Africa. And so, yes, I would say I am living my childhood dreams, although what it looks like is very different from what I'd pictured as a child. This is what I had planned on doing in my life.
Right. And people usually say, look, I'm not here by accident, I'm here for a purpose, and this is my purpose. Just in one or two sentences, what would you say your life purpose is?
Well, I every day exist to try to say, God, use me to make the world around me a better place. I want to be a light where I am. I want to make a positive impact. I want to encourage people and bless people, and ultimately lead people to a relationship with God that has given me so much joy and peace in my life. So I think one word would be to be a light.
To be a light. Now, when we are young, there are so many, like relatives who cross our path, and one way or the other, they do have an impact, they do have an influence in our lives. When you look back to your childhood, who is the one relative you would say, I think this one was the most impactful person in my childhood?
Probably my father. My father is much like my husband. In fact, I probably chose my husband because of my father's example. Just a very godly man, very humble man. He's a lawyer, and which some people would laugh to say a godly lawyer is like an oxymoron. But he is just an amazing godly man, and maybe has some success by the world's standards, but his success, he's always been very clear that it's based on his relationship with Christ and his relationship with his family. And that spoke a lot to me growing up. I mean, he's a very busy, successful lawyer, but yet he always made time for us, his kids and his wife. And so I see a world around me that constantly pursues success and pursues, financial gain. And I look at my father who had those things, but he didn't have to pursue them at the expense of that which was important to him. And that gave me a lot of foundation and grounding, which I try to encourage other people to have because I've seen that it works. And now that I'm older, I can testify it even works in my life, that you don't have to sell out on your family and your relationship with God and other things in order to have these things that a lot of times the world deems are very important.
Just an appreciation of your family background. Would you say you are coming from a big family, a small family, and what would be the ratio in terms of boys and girls, and where do you appear in the structure?
I'm the oldest, and I have a sister and a young brother, but that family, my immediate family, is not a very big family. 3 kids, I guess, is not huge, but my mother's family, she has 5 brothers and sisters, and they all have their own children, and my mom's mom had 6 kids in 7 years, so all of them are very close in age, and now they started having their kids the same age. So me and my cousins are all within about 5 years span. So we grew up really, really close as an extended family, doing all our holidays and much together because we were more like brothers and sisters because we were all so close in age.
Wow. So you were basically, being the eldest is a lot of responsibility that goes with it, isn't it? Yeah. Tell me something. When we are young, our minds are pretty sharp. And this is why I guess parents would normally say, you need to be careful who these little kids associate with and the like. Sharp as they are, that's probably the time when we pick some life values, which then mold us to a point where today Ashley looks herself in the mirror and says, I'm the responsible mom, I'm the responsible wife, I'm the responsible citizen that I am because of this value, which has molded me to be the person that I am. Which value would that be for you?
Probably the importance of family. It's something that growing up, my mom is a child psychologist, so she worked in the school system in the guidance and counseling department. Like I said, my father was a lawyer, so they were both working professional parents. But yet we always had breakfast together every morning, and we had dinner together every night. And in the States we have a big thing called like community league sports. So every season, with 3 children, because I'm one of 3, there's always a softball game, a baseball game, a basketball game, a swimming thing. And my dad and my mom would always be at every single sporting event. So that would have taken a lot of sacrifice. When I look at a lot of African parents, that concept of taking off work to go watch your kid in a play or a thing kind of sounds a bit foreign, but that was the norm of my life. And I think that has carried over to be something that sets me apart. I think I'm here, and something I'm trying to encourage parents is don't let these young days of your children pass so quickly that they speed by and you're always at work and you missed out on that. Right. So I think that's a value that my parents did really well instilling in me that's carried on.
I was actually going to say, it may sound a bit foreign, but I think especially in urban centers, we are very much similar, in our lifestyle to, any other country out there. And one thing that I realize is we get more married to our jobs. That children are actually on their own and the like. That might be your observation so far. You've been around a long time.
Yes.
What would be your word of advice with parents?
Well, I think the word of advice is the time that you have is very small when your children are young and impressionable. And from what I've seen, I'm only 40, so I'm not a wise guru, but from what I've seen, the people that invest in the early years with their children, those children become a blessing to them for many years to come, because they poured into the foundational years. The parents that skip that and kind of leave them to maids or to relatives or just to stay at home and don't pour into them, those kids tend to go in such a way that they bring headaches and stresses into their parents' lives. And so I would say it's a worth it investment to invest now while the kids are young for the first 10, 15 years. And then that's it. The rest of your life, I think you've built a strong, responsible child who loves you and respects you. And the hope is they're going to become independent, responsible adults who will bless you for the rest of your life. So yeah, I think that's one thing that I would encourage.
Let's roll back a little bit. There's this stage which all of us pass through, is called being a teenager. Have a recollection of what sort of battles you battled with as a teenager?
Well, sorry, my throat is acting up today. I said I was going to be a missionary when I was 12 years old. And so I never went through, I think, the typical thing that a lot of teenagers go through where they maybe start drinking alcohol or dating boys. Or my biggest battle was just back talking my mom. I've always been a very opinionated person, and my mother is a very strong person. And so that led to a lot of, disrespect and, problems in that sense. But I never did have the kind of rebellious stage. I was always very confident that God existed and that my life would be better if I followed him and not my path. Even as a teenager, I was like that. So yeah, I think probably just disrespecting my parents was my big sin.
I'm deliberately asking that one because I know you are someone who is working with communities, youngsters, elderly people and the like. Maybe a word of wisdom, a word of advice to the teenager of today, to the guardian of a teenager today, because it's always like a battlefield between the two, to an extent where maybe the guardian actually says, I wonder when schools are opening so this person
I can get rid of them. Yeah. Well, I think to the teenager, it's some of the choices I made in purity were choices that my peers at the time made fun of me for and kind of shunned me for. Oh, she's a virgin. Oh, don't talk about this with her because she won't understand. She's innocent. Various things. But as I continue to love them, but not be bothered by their insults or by their peer pressure to do things I didn't want to do, I continue to maintain my friendships with them while not becoming like them. And so I do believe the word of advice to those teenagers would be that you can maintain friends without joining in what they're doing. And now I can tell you, as someone who's now come out of teenagehood, or teenage, I don't know what that would call, but out of my teenage years, many of those very people that made fun of me have come back to me and said, I wish I would have, not slept around with every guy. I wish I would have saved myself. I wish I wouldn't have gotten drunk every weekend. I wish I would have ABC. And so a lot of those choices that I made because I was convinced that they were the right choice for me, my friends did not make, and they later regretted it. And so to that teenager, I would say, really think hard, because the choices that you're making now will set a standard and a pace that you're going to follow for the rest of your life. And some of those choices you won't be able to reverse later on. And so I would just say, don't believe the lie that you're young, you only live once, and you can just do whatever you want, because there are consequences to every decisions we make. Right. And to the guardian, I would say, spend time with your children. I work a lot with youth, and I am very frustrated and shocked with the amount of youth that tell me that their parents only care about the grades they make. They don't care about their friends. They don't care about what they do. They don't even care about what they're learning at church. They just, as long as you make good grades, you're a good kid. And there's just more to a teenager's life than the grades they make. I mean, there's a lot of a person that's being developed. And as a parent or a guardian, you're only going to find that out if you spend the time with them. And there's no shortcut to that. You just have to spend time with that kid. So that's something I would encourage more parents to do, is to value, or not to undervalue, just the quality time with your teenager, asking about their day, asking what they're struggling with, playing family games, going on family trips, picnics, just spending time and getting to know that person.
When you were young, you had this calling that you're going to be a missionary. But I suppose you went through schooling like everybody else. And when we finish our high school, there's now that challenge of what is it that I'm going to be in terms of career choice. Did you battle with that, or for you it was just clear, no, I'm just going to be a missionary, I don't need to bother about career?
My mom, like I said, I come from a very high-end family, from a family of lawyers and psychologists and whatnot. So there's something in the States called AP classes, which is advanced placement. So you take these and they give you an up in college. And so my mom always was like, okay, well, you can do that missionary thing, but in case that passes, you're going to be taking advanced placement classes. And so, I mean, I think my grade point average when I graduated high school was 98 or 99. I don't ever remember making a B. And then I went to an Ivy League school, and I graduated from there cum laude, which is with honors. I think my grade point average there was 95, an A. And so I always felt like I should do whatever I do with excellence. And my degree was in religions of the world. I felt like if I was going to go out and tell people about Jesus, then it would be very responsible of me to take the time in a university setting to learn about Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism and Christianity and Judaism. Basically, the 5 major world religions is what I studied in school. So I definitely did do the college path, because my parents made me, but it's something I wanted to do anyway, because I did want to, not trade in my brain. I wanted to exercise my brain and learn as much as I could while the opportunity was there.
All right. Tell me about your landing in Botswana. When did it happen?
I came to Botswana 18 years ago.
Right.
And I came originally as a missionary working with the Southern Baptist Church, and I worked in Francistown. I worked in all the senior and junior secondary schools there. So Montamaisa, Goldmine, Donga, Sakali Kosi, Salepa, FSS, Matis Bay. And I would just teach the youth the Bible in those schools.
Right. Today, you are described as a motivational speaker, a published author. Let's go to motivation. When did you find the motivational speaker in you?
Well, I've always done a lot of public speaking since I was a young girl. One of the great things about my church that I grew up in is that our pastor was very good at identifying people with certain gifts and allowing them to exercise those. So I got a lot of public speaking opportunities growing up. And then when I was in university, I became a youth minister, I was in charge of a church youth group. So again, that led to a lot of preaching and sermons. And then when I left Botswana the first time, I was here from 2000 to 2002, and then I was hired to be what they call a missions mobilizer. And so my job was to travel around America, different city almost every day, speaking to huge groups of teenagers and basically motivating them with the understanding that they could go into the world and make a difference in the world and mobilize missions. So I did do a lot of speaking then. And then I moved to Canada for 4 years, where I started a church. So again, that lent itself to a lot of public speaking. So the public speaking has been there for as long as I can remember, but the motivational speaking now is something that has come up as just I've lived my life, and people have kind of seen a quality that they like, and they come and say, would you be willing to come talk to us about health and fitness, or about raising your kids more intentionally, or about even gardening? I mean, gardening, I just posted some pictures on Facebook about my garden, and before I knew it, radios and different NGOs were saying, oh, can you come teach us about backyard gardening?
Mm-hmm. Quite interesting. I mean, you are quite huge, or very much passionate about family welfare. Starting off with your own family, I know you mentioned your husband. Just share with us your family. How big is your family?
My immediate family.
Your current family.
Okay.
The Thaba family.
The Thaba family. Okay. Well, I have a daughter named Abby. She's 5. And a son named Caleb, and he's 8. And then a daughter named Anna Catherine, and she's 10. And so I have 3 kids. And then, of course, an amazing husband named Percy. So that's how big my family is.
Wonderful. I'm just deliberately giving that background because since it's your area of interest, you are not talking fiction. You are actually
No.
talking something that you have experienced as a family person.
And that, by the way, is I think one of the reasons why the doors keep opening for different motivational speaking opportunities,
Right.
because I do speak from very practical advice, and people tend to give me feedback that that's very refreshing, because I think a lot of people do speak more from the theoretical side of standpoints, whether that's because they don't want to let people in their family because they're kind of like private or whatever, but I kind of feel like whatever God is teaching me and my family is probably something that someone else could be encouraged by if I were to share that with them as well. So I tend to draw from my practical experience when I do my speaking.
6:28 right now on Duma FM, more talk, more music. There we go. I believe every one of us is born with a seed of greatness in us. Unfortunately, a number of us never get to know what that gift is, and therefore we never actually get to give this world what it ought to have. Here is someone who is sharing with us just her simple life reality. She's actually an open book. In fact, I love that family because that entire family is like an open book for anyone to read from them, and they're being realistic. The question is, have you found what your gift is, and are you making use of it? Well, this is Ashley Thaba, who is sharing with us her own life journey. We will get on to hear more of our talk between me and Ashley this morning, because unfortunately she couldn't make it to be with us in the evening, but her story goes on. Don't go away. We're going to take a short breather. When we get back, we'll get to hear more. 6:33 right now on Duma FM, more talk, more music. Welcome back, dear listener. Like we listened to this amazing lady, Ashley Thaba, sharing with us her background, sharing with us her life story. The discussion did go on. We just took a short breather, but then let's hear what actually came out of this lady, an amazing woman who is committed to giving the world what it deserves. She believes she's not here by chance, but she's here for a purpose, and she wants to live her purpose. Let's hear what she had to say. Man, one of the areas is marriage advice. What sort of areas, what sort of hints do you touch on in that line?
Well, that one is quite huge, marriage advice. I mean, we do a lot of like marriage conferences, and my husband and I, and then also just some marriage counseling. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of hard. You'd have to ask me a specific question.
No, but that's
marriage
good
is
enough.
such a huge
You actually
topic.
run some kind of workshops, you get invited
Yes.
to?
I get invited to do different workshops
Right.
in churches and secular events, because again, I think I actually was just on BTV this past Thursday on
Right.
a show called Loving You, speaking about marriage as well. I think that a lot of people desire a healthy marriage, but there is a lack of practical advice on what that looks like.
Right.
And that's the void I'm trying to fill, is to help people to see, you know, a lot of times in the church, people say, well, just pray about it. Well, okay, that's fine and dandy, and I'm all for prayer, but what does that look like? Who takes out the trash? You know, who puts the kids to bed? Who cooks every meal? What does it look like to have a healthy, happy marriage? And that's what my husband and I more focus on, because we do have a wonderful marriage. I just happen to be married to a fantastic man.
I believe so. I mean, if you are going to talk about it together, I mean, they say if you want to see if a husband is telling the truth, put the wife in the front row.
Yes, yes.
Now, parenting advice. Yes. There is that issue when it comes to the issue of parenting
Yes.
and the like, because if we are not careful in that area, then our children, our grandchildren, and all of those who are coming, the other generations, one wonders where they will go. Have you found that to be so much of a challenge?
Well, I have a
deal with the
Facebook
issue
page
of,
called Mom to Mom Parenting Consultations.
Right.
And on that page, I think there's about 3,500 people. And many people in that seek me for parenting advice. Some actually come for consultations, like actual paid consultations. But basically what I'm, again, trying to do is to just give people very practical advice on how to raise their kids. And I am not an expert. One of the things, again, that I stress is that I'm just going to tell you the lesson I learned this week that worked for me. You know, like by next week it might not work, because you need to know I'm not a perfect parent, but I'm striving and I'm intentional about what I'm doing. And I want to encourage you to do the same. And there's no right way or wrong way. This is just what worked for me today. And if that helps you, you know, like I'll give you an example. My husband works very, very long hours. He's a project manager, and he does a lot of traveling as well. So, he doesn't get to do like what my father did, where he does dinner every night as the family. And, we don't get to have some of those consistent family times every night. So what he does when he's had like a week where he's been away or he's been very busy is he takes a Saturday afternoon, as tired as he might be, and he just tells the kids, I'm yours. What do you want to do? And so my littlest will say, let's do a puzzle. My boy will say, let's go play soccer. My girl will say, can you watch me do a fashion show? I mean, they're each one has a different way they want to bond. But Percy will say, this is your afternoon. And that was I just suggested that one day on my page, and I got a lot of really good feedback from people saying my husband likes that because I'm constantly nagging him to say, spend more time with the kids. But I didn't have a specific thing to say, okay, how about this? From 1 to 4 on Saturday afternoon, that's the time where you tell the kids, I'm yours. So just those little practical advice to help parents with the lessons I'm currently learning as well.
Right. Financial advice. What do you find is of crucial, importance for people to know?
Yeah, well, again, that was an area that a lot of our friends have sought us out because we have a very different belief than a lot of people in that we believe you shouldn't buy what you can't afford. And we don't believe that you should go into debt living a life that pleases other people and it ends up stressing you. And so we tend to really encourage people that, you need to live a life that is the one you can afford and just be content with what you have. Just a simple example. My daughter the other day came home and said everybody else's parents give them 5 pula every day to buy sweets at the tuck shop. I don't give my daughter sweet at 5 pula every day. And she actually wanted to steal my money. This is my 5-year-old. And so, I had to explain to her that for the rest of your life, there will always be someone with something shinier or sweeter. And you aren't having that. For one, because I don't want you to get in the habit of eating 5 pula worth of sweets every single day because I care about your health. But also, I'm not going to waste 25 pula a week giving you, money. I already pay enough in school fees, So I sat her down at 5 years old and we had a talk about budgeting and about priorities and about learning to be content with what you have, even though your friends may not have that. That's okay, And every now and then I might bless you with some sweets here and there. Obviously I will. But you need to understand that you're going to be content with that because next year it'll be the nice backpack. Then the following year it's going to be the nice car. And then it's going to be the nice job and then the nice house. And you'll spend the rest of your life trying to live a life that you can't afford. And it'll make you miserable. And so that's something I think that when I do have the opportunity to talk to people about finances and budgeting, which I have had some opportunities to do that, that's kind of the direction I take.
Right. From what I'm picking, you are more like an open book with your own life.
Yes.
So that those who can afford to read, let them read and benefit something out of it. You say something about prenatal advice. Tell us about it.
Well, some people would be familiar with the book I wrote on my first son, which was Medical Negligence Rendered Him Severely Brain Damaged. And so because of that, I realized, and because of the parents that came to me after reading that book that had similar experiences, I realized that there was a lack of good, again, practical prenatal advice, and not only just prenatal advice, but kind of what to do with the kid. I think a lot of times pregnant first-time moms, they spend a lot of time preparing for the birth and not the baby. How do we get the kid to sleep through the night? One of the things is I trained all of my children to sleep through the night by 9 weeks. How do you breastfeed? Sometimes health professionals will tell you don't have enough breast milk. Well, there's some techniques you can do to stimulate breast milk, and so you don't have to necessarily just go straight to formula because a health professional told you. So there's some things like that, or like how do you feed your kid healthy food? You can start that. I wrote a book, a healthy eating cookbook, because I realized that a lot of parents were complaining about 2 and 3 because their kids were eating knickknacks and sweets all the time. But those habits started, they didn't realize, with the kind of food they introduced them when they were 6 months. So those are some of the things that I teach when I teach about prenatal advice.
Wow. Something that you are big on, homeschooling, something that is not conventional with a lot of people, is
Yes.
not so common and the like. It sounds a bit foreign. Just give us a bit of background. What probably prompted you to, because you have done it practically. 5 years is not a short time.
6 years now. This is my 6th year now, I think.
Right.
Yes.
Tell us about homeschooling. What's that concept? To someone who hasn't even heard about it before.
So the concept of homeschooling is that you teach your kid in your home. That's pretty simple. The reason behind that, I did put my child in school, my first child, and so I had the one child in reception and then 2 kids at home because I didn't put my kids in preschool. I decided, since I was a stay-at-home mom, I would teach them the reading, the writing, the manners, the basic foundational preschool kind of topics. But then it came reception time, and I did what every parent does. You put them in school. And my daughter, who was this very bubbly, confident person, suddenly went to this very clingy, very just her self-confidence just dropped. And I'm not sure if that was because of some of the experiences she was having at school or because she was just jealous that she got shipped off every day and her siblings got to stay home with mom. But whatever the case, by the time she was in standard 1, it was becoming very obvious that if we didn't pull her back, her very nature of who she was getting destroyed by shipping her off to school every day. And so another thing was some of the values that were being taught, the lying, the beating, just some things that I do spank my kids, but it's something that I do in a disciplinary, loving manner, not an anger beating sort of manner. And so just some values that they were instilling, and the person that she was becoming I didn't like, and my husband and I just kind of complained. And to top it all off, you're paying a lot of money for that, and so I'd come home and say, if I could do this, I would do this. If I would do this. And my husband one day just said, well, then do it. If you want to do it, then do it yourself. And I said, I will. And so I began homeschooling my daughter, and then my son came and I put him in school because I thought, well, she was exceptional. Okay, I mean, like, not exceptional, like she was an exception. Right. And my son, because of his brain damage, did have some problems with his fine motor, and the school kind of deemed that because he had a problem writing, he was a slow kid, and they sort of wrote him off because, to be fair, a teacher has 28, 30 kids, and the kid that takes work is just not going to get the attention because it's easier to sort of write it on the board and have all the kids that can catch up just do the work. And he took some energy, and so they just kind of left him behind. And for him, I just realized if I don't take him out, nobody's going to love him and put the extra energy that I will put in because he's my kid. And so that was the story with him. Now my daughter is currently in standard 1. And she's actually doing fantastic. So I now have to decide next year whether I will pull her out and homeschool her or whether I will keep her in school because she doesn't have some of the issues that the other two had. However, having homeschooled them for 5 years, there's a bond there. There was some moral development I got to put in there. There's also, obviously, when you're teaching a kid one-on-one, you get to cover the subject matter much faster. So I've been able to teach them botany and anatomy and history of the world and some things that I probably wouldn't have been covered at their ages. So I might actually do that so she can have the same experience I gave the other two.
So your first and second, are they still homeschooled?
So my son is still homeschooled. I just put my daughter in school for standard 6. This is her first time going to school since standard 1.
Your observation, the conventional education out there and homeschooling, pros and cons either way?
Well, a pro is you kind of get rid of your kids. Like, homeschooling is a job, and it's the problem with homeschooling is if you do it well, you're doing homeschool all morning, and then you take the hat off, and then you kind of have to make lunch, and then help them do homework, and then clean their rooms, and it's a 24-hour day. You never get a break. So it can become very exhausting. And of course, your kids become more and more comfortable. And so that becomes like, I said, do your homework, and it becomes stressful sometimes. Yeah. So that can become a bit of a stress that a parent that kind of gets to outsource that job of teaching doesn't have to deal with. One of the positives is that you don't have to travel around town. You don't have to be up at 5 a.m. I mean, homeschool starts when you want it to start. So we started school at 9, right. So there's some positives and negatives to both. I don't think there's one way that's best for everybody. Every family just kind of has to choose what's best for them.
How do you make up for the socialization of the children? Because one day you and I will be old and they will be out there mixing with this community and they otherwise would have started mingling with when they were at school. Yeah. How do you compensate that? How do you make up for that?
I'm just very intentional. Well, first of all, I think one thing to add to that is that most of the time, if you think honestly about when you're in school, your teacher's like, sit down, be quiet, sit down, be quiet. There's actually not that much socialization in a typical school day. But I am very intentional. I sign them up for soccer lessons, ballet lessons. We also happen to go to a great church with a good Sunday school program, Bible study with, and again, more kids. We happen to also be on a very good street where everybody on our street lets their kids play on the street every day. So that creates, you're skipping rope, you're climbing trees, you're playing soccer on the street. And then I'm also intentional about planning play dates with friends. So we have people come spend the night, or my kids go spend the night at somebody else's house. Or they just come up for a play date. So we're just intentional about it, about making it happen. I don't think it's something that's a hard thing as long as you're intentional about it.
No, that's beautiful. I just wanted you to highlight that, because somebody might look at it and
Definitely. That is the first question most people ask.
Yeah, and they may feel that you are isolating your children, and when you disappear, then they will be confused in this world. Ashley is a certified ACE personal trainer. Tell us about it.
Well, when I've always been into sports. I did varsity sports, swimming and tennis, and like I said, with my father growing up, we did community sports. I played softball, I ran, I did marathons, triathlons. I've just always been an athletic person. And then I remember I said I want to be a missionary. So I came to Botswana, did the mission thing, went to Canada, did the mission thing. And then remember my husband and I moved back to the States for 2 years. Now, when we moved back to the States, I'm sure everyone's heard about the elusive green card. It took about a year for my husband to get a green card. Well, my training was in religion. My passion was in being a missionary. And suddenly I found myself in my hometown because my husband and I wanted him to get to know my world and my family for 2 years. And I'm like, what am I qualified to do? I got to find a job because my husband's not going to be able to work, at least it took about a year to get a green card. And so everyone said, well, why don't you be a personal trainer? Because people had already been coming to me asking me for health advice and fitness advice. And so ACE is one of the number ones in the world, I think. It's American Council on Exercise. So it's an extremely tough and comprehensive training. It's very, very comprehensive on the body and anatomy. And so I decided, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do the best, And so I did ACE. Also did a thing called Silver Sneakers, which helps you to work with older people and exercise, taking in consideration different joint issues and different heart conditions and what. And so for the year that Percy couldn't work, I did personal training. So it is something that since I had my kids, I could no longer do, because personal training kind of means you have to go to the gym to meet this person at 6, then you have to go to the gym, meet this person at 12, and I can't do that now as a full-time mom. But the things I learned in personal training and the nutritional and the fitness background has something I've carried with me. And people still, in fact, I have corporations sometimes that will come call me to go and speak to them about health and wellness, or come do a fitness day to teach their people basic things they can do at work, or just basic ways that, because a healthy person is a more productive person.
Right.
So as corporations realize that bringing in a speaker to kind of help them just sort of teach practical skills, then their workplace efficiency goes up.
Silver Sneaker instructors. Tell me about it.
Well, Silver Sneaker is a big thing in the States, which I was certified in. Basically what it is, which is something actually insurance companies could go hear, the insurance companies in the States have realized that people who exercise get sick less. And so a Silver Sneaker and a certified instructor is someone who's been trained in all the health fitness ways and ways to deal with especially the older people. And so when they come to their gym, these older people who have insurance, I click their card if I'm an instructor, and I used to teach classes and what. And then if they go to their insurance company and show they went to a certain amount of classes a month, they get discounts on their insurance, because the insurance realize that if people are exercising, their joints aren't as bad, their heart's not as bad, their blood pressure's not as bad, their depression's not as bad. And so they realized it was cheaper to pay a gym and pay instructors to train these people than to keep paying the medicines and whatever else. So that was what a Silver Sneaker instructor is.
So that is happening in the States?
Very, very popular in the States.
Can we sell the idea in Botswana?
I've tried to. I actually talked to 2 gyms about it when I first came back. I said, guys, y'all should do this, because it's basically gyms partner with insurance company. And if you're listening and you have this idea, I can tell you about it.
I believe there's someone from insurance who is listening right now.
You can call me.
An appointment. Right. An area of interest for you, communication and conflict resolution. Tell me about it.
One of the things that has helped my marriage and has just helped my friendships in general is being very clear on how to communicate with other people. And I find that a lot of times in Botswana, having lived here now for 12 years, a lot of times society kind of says, oh, children are to be seen, not heard. And so they grow up sort of, kid, go get this, kid, go get this. But there's not a lot of interacting with the kid to really teach that child how to communicate in such a way they can respect, but they can also let their voice be heard. And so now I think there's a pendulum swing where sometimes they're letting the kids have too much freedom because they're kind of backlashing against what their parents did to them. And so I believe that there's a need to practically teach in the family and in the workplace as well, just communication techniques. Like, for example, I can go to, this happened, let me not say the name, but I went to a place the other day, and it was, I think, around sometime during lunch. And I was talking to the lady, excuse me, can you help me? And she just stared at me. Excuse me, can you help me? Sure. And then I look at the guard. Can she hear? Like, I wasn't even saying sarcastically. I was literally, is the lady deaf? Like, I'm looking her in the eye. Oh, she's on her lunch break. So she physically can't open her mouth and say, I'm on my lunch break? You know, I mean, because there's this thing that we can just ignore. We can just shut down and we can just not communicate. And, right. You know, I just find that causes a lot of unnecessary stress and unnecessary productivity, lack of productivity in the workplace. And so companies sometimes call me in to teach seminars to teach their employees how to better communicate, also how to better resolve conflict. By nature, I think a lot of times Botswana are kind of anti-confrontational, and because of that, sometimes they don't really deal with some issues, and so what ends up happening is they withdraw, and then all of a sudden they explode because they've been holding it in. And so I sometimes teach, when I do these different workshops, communication, conflict resolution, I try to go through very practical tips of if your employer does this is how you can address this. If your fellow employee does this, here's some tips on how you can address this. If your customers are saying these kind of things, here's some things you can address. Because I believe that customers will be more loyal if you talk to them nicely and communicate nicely to them. I believe that your employees will stay longer if they enjoy the workplace environment. So I just believe that communication and conflict resolution in the workplace is a need that we have here to teach people how to express themselves.
And where do you think we probably need to start teaching such?
Well,
if someone is already an employee and you are going to respond because there is a conflict that's going on, and you have to try and ask them to change the culture. Where do you think we should
I actually met with the previous Assistant Minister of Health to discuss some of these ideas. Not health, but Minister of Education. Because I did have some ideas of ways that we could actually start putting communication and confidence boosting ways within the school system from a younger age. I mean, I don't want to go into too much of those details because I'm actually in talks with the Minister of Education about that. But I do think there's some ideas that we should start even much younger than the workplace, right. But starting in the school in the elementary schools and in the junior schools.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of work that needs to be done out there. And you are in the field, you're actually working. Tell me, every industry has got its own challenges in all these different aspects. I mean, talking about the family situations, talking about like maybe in the corporate world, what you are realizing there. What is the change that you probably are finding to be there in the motivational speaking atmosphere or space?
I think a lot of people, they want you to come and encourage them, but then they don't want to put the value for money into it. And so that can become a challenge sometimes because people are like, no, we want you to speak. And you're like, okay, but remember, I have kids' school fees to pay too, and I have food to pay too.
Right.
Oh, well, but can you just come speak? And so I think putting the monetary equivalent, that this is a value to you. If you help your employees to communicate better, that will actually increase productivity and hopefully increase customer loyalty. You know, if you teach your employees how to be healthier, then that's something that's going to, again, create loyalty to the company because you're showing them that you care about their health and not just what they're going to do for you. And it's also going to create healthier, happier people, which is going to create workplace efficiency as well. You know, so these various things that I think just understanding that when you do come with a skill where you're trying to help people practically improve their lives, that also has a monetary value. And so I think that's probably the only challenging thing. As far as people wanting it, there's no lack of that.
No. There is this other side of you. You are an author, a published author. You have written not just one book, but more. Let's go through the books.
Okay, so the first book I wrote was called Conquering the Giants, and that book I wrote as a testimony of just what God did to my son, which was my son that dealt with some medical negligence and brain damage. And so that book actually focuses very little on the actual experience of how he got brain damage. It focuses much more on going to the practical aspect of how we dealt with the problem. From how do we forgive the doctors? How do we trust God to heal a son that they said might never, see or walk or be able to discern right from wrong? From a financial standpoint, how do we handle that? We had Bowmate at the time, and within, I think, 3 or 4 days, the hospital called and said, the $60,000 that Bowmate has allotted for a newborn has expired, so, this will now be from your pocket. So how do you deal with that kind of financial stress? From a marriage standpoint, a lot of parents with brain damaged children, it creates a lot of stress on the family. So that talks about how my husband and I went through this as a united front. So, and also just the Bible verses that God gave me that kind of became a lifeline of hope during a very dark time. So that was what that book is about. It's called Conquering the Giants.
Who is it aimed at?
Anyone who goes through any hardships in life.
Right.
It's really across the board.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Then my second book was in response to so many parents coming to me. One of the things, because my son did have some brain damage, a lot of brain damage, I was very intentional about researching. And again, because of my personal training background and my understanding of fitness and anatomy and physiology and health and nutrition, I was very conscious of the fact that what you eat affects your ability to thrive. Mm-hmm. And so I was, from a very early age, I fed my kids extremely healthy diets that is, low processed food, a lot of organic foods, a lot of food that I grow in my yard, which is actually how I started doing the gardening, because I started realizing you can't find vegetables here. Sometimes you have to sell a kidney to buy, asparagus or something. So, I just started growing a lot of the stuff in my own yard because I'm like, well, I'm just going to do this myself. I kind of tend to be if I don't like it, I'll just do it myself kind of thing. So anyway, all that to say, parents started coming to me and saying, how do you get your kids to eat? Like, my kids eat like spinach and beetroot and butternut for breakfast. I blend them into like a smoothie for them. How do you get your kids to eat healthy? How do you get your kids this? And so I wrote a cookbook that was aimed at helping parents just eating healthier. And then I did like a 10-day meal plan for them in that cookbook, which is, breakfast, lunch, dinner for 10 days, just to kind of give people a change of mindset of what your meals could look like. So
the title of the book again?
It's just Healthy Eating Cookbook. Uh-huh. That one is one I sell in soft copy because I put color pictures on every page so that you could really view the recipes. But now once you try to print a 100-page book with color pictures on every page, it becomes very expensive. So I find it cheaper to sell in soft copy. Mm-hmm. So people, if they're interested, can write me on Mom to Mom. That's M-O-M. I'm an American, not a British, spelled I think M-U-M. But anyway, that's M-O-M, Mom to Mom Parenting Consultations, and I sell that through soft copy.
Right. That's your second book.
And then my third book is Dive In. That is a Bible study guide. And the reason I wrote that was because I was beginning to feel a bit concerned with the amount of people that were, I think, desiring spiritual intimacy, like they wanted to have a relationship with God, or they wanted to connect with a force that was bigger than themselves, but they didn't know how. And so this was leading, I think, some people to kind of come and manipulate and prey on desperate people who are seeking, miracles, or seeking help, or seeking a peace that they weren't finding, and people were offering that for a financial gain. And I felt like the Bible is very clear about you can go to God directly, and that you have a Savior who loves you, and you don't need a priest or an intermediate. And so I wanted to write a book that was extremely practical on how to read the Bible and how to apply it to your life. And so Dive In is currently in stores and exclusive books at Winners Chapel, and Block 6 has a bookstore. And it's sold also in Palapi, in Tatumi, in Francistown, Arapa, Kasani, and Juaning. If you want that, again, you can write me at the Mom to Mom Parenting Consultations, and I can arrange. But the goal of that book is really to get Botswana to understand, here's how you read the Bible. Here's how to apply it to your life so that your life can become better. Because again, another thing is, I think there's a misconception that the Bible is kind of this outdated book that doesn't really apply to our lives anymore. And I don't find that to be true. I find it to be a wonderful guidebook from my Creator that actually has helped me, by following the advice of the Bible, to have a very fulfilling, productive, joy-filled life. And it's something I'd love to help other people be able to experience.
What's your desire for Botswana families? You are one of the families, and you are looking as a nation, because I believe the importance of a family. Maybe let's put it
I think
way.
that it's tremendously underutilized. I mean, the solid families can become the building block of a much stronger economy, a much stronger nation in general. I mean, if every family is raising up kids who have a work ethic, who have a moral integrity and some kind of moral compass, then you don't see a lot of the entitlement, you don't see the laziness, you don't see the corruption, or you would not see if we had parents who are instilling these values in an early age in their children. And so I just believe that the family unit, you also find that if a couple is married or children come from a solid, stable family, they tend to be more productive citizens because they have stability within their life. And so I think that the family unit has tremendous potential if we put a lot of focus into practically training families within the nation, of making our entire nation a better place, from every single facet of, from health to government offices to lawyers to doctors. Every facet would be better if these were kids, adults who were once kids, raised with a sense of what was right and wrong.
Life is life. It has its ups and downs. Do you remember a moment in your life when it was like life had turned its back on you? They say sometimes life throws curveballs at us. When you found yourself at the lowest of the low?
I think that would definitely be with my son. When the doctors looked at me and said, 5 days ago, you went into labor with a healthy baby boy. But now, because of the medical negligence of doctors, your son is severely brain damaged. And he may never walk. He may never be able to see. And he might never be able to understand right from wrong. And I just remember just devastated. 5 days ago, I'm this mom pregnant with a full-term baby boy about to bring him home from the hospital, and everything was going great. And in 1 minute, my entire world changed, and just so quickly. And there's so many other things like were associated with that just a very hard time. But that was what the first book about, was how God really brought us out of the darkness in that situation and gave us a lifeline to hope in that situation.
There's no guarantees with our tomorrows. What's a source of inspiration from day to day?
For me personally, I am a firm believer that I have to connect to. There's a verse in the Bible that says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, you'll bear much fruit. And so I'm very aware that I am just a branch. I'm just a human among 7 billion other humans on planet Earth. There's nothing inherently special within me. However, if I connect to the source that created the universe, and I'm conscious about doing that on a daily basis, then I'm able to draw power and strength and peace and joy that is not of this world. So it's able to carry me through the trials of this world. And so that is my source of inspiration and strength on a daily basis.
Some people say, look, I have this personal philosophy that I live by. Some say I have a quote, I have a motto, I have a slogan that I quote to myself every morning, for daily motivation. Anything like that?
There's a verse in the Bible, and it says, I've been crucified to self, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And so I try to be very aware every day that if there's anything good you see in me, it's because I've literally said, I want to die to myself and my nature and allow the Spirit of Christ to live through me. And so I do that throughout the day, especially because I do a lot of motivational speaking and public speaking. I want to be very, very aware for myself that anything positive that I say, of any wisdom that I might have, it comes from a source that's not within myself. So I have nothing to be arrogant about. If God has gifted me with any knowledge or any experience, because I do offer that in such a public platform, that I don't want to become some arrogant person that thinks I'm better than someone else, because I'm not. I'm simply a recipient of a wisdom and knowledge that comes through the Word of God and the Spirit of God. And so I've been crucified to myself, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And so I think of myself as an ambassador or a messenger, not as a super special person or something like that.
Somebody sitting there with pen and paper ready, and they're saying, look, we need to connect with Ashley Thaba. We believe she can come speak to our youngsters, or I personally need some kind of advice from her, or we could do with her resources such as the books that she has. Where would you direct them to?
Probably the easiest thing is Facebook. My name is Ashley Thaba, but also I have a Facebook page called Mom to Mom, and again, that's MOM, Mom to Mom Parenting Consultations. And if you can inbox me on that page, then I can talk to you about anything you need to talk to. So Mom to Mom Parenting Consultations, or you can just inbox me at Ashley Thaba. But I am very open, because I do desire to make a difference in this country, and I do desire to avail myself to be of use in any way to encourage other people.
It's been lovely having a chat with you.
It's been lovely being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Wishing you all the best in all your endeavors.
Thank you. God bless you too.